Hello and welcome to a Friday edition of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. Our podcast is brought to you by Ascension Sports, where elite athletes rise above the noise. Whether you're navigating NIL deals, building your personal brand, or preparing for the next level, Ascension Sports provides tailored consulting help to maximize every opportunity on and off the field, from recruiting insight to pre-draft prep and everything in between. Learn more at ascensionsportsconsulting.com. Again, ascensionsportsconsulting.com. All right, we also want to thank Home Instead in Tallahassee and Scott and Todd Harrell at Home Instead. Their adaptable care plans give you the confidence of personalized help that's with you throughout your day. Even though we know there are plenty of things you still want to fly solo on, like finishing your daily crossword puzzle, trying aqua aerobics, or watching baseball, or just generally hogging the remote, we'll provide you companionship when you need it and space when you don't, all with a smile from qualified, compassionate caregivers matched to you. Visit Home Instead online for a better what's next at homeinsteadalley.com. Again, that's homeinsteadalley.com. We also want to thank Dan Mowry and the Mowry Law Firm. Dan and his team of lawyers bring over 50 years of experience with them, specializing in car and truck accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death cases. Dan and his team are based out of St. Augustine, Florida, and can be reached at 904-824-7799 or at MowryLaw.com. All right, Shane, we're going to do a fast Friday version. First of all, how's your Friday going?
Good. Friday Night Lights, first Friday of high school football, which is always a cool day. Also watching some tape, evaluating some guys on this Friday. So good day.
Yeah, so is the Burnham family attending the Child's football game tonight?
Half of them, well, half of the high school Burnhams are. Our youngest, Brady, wants to go. My oldest, Lindsay, not heading that way. But yeah, I'm going to go and I can take part myself.
I saw that Brady Bunch had posted something on social media today, so I knew she was fired up about the game. I believe it was a picture of Bill Reagan's butt, to be honest with you. You can go to. Well, he was moving something, and she was making fun of his technique to lift a large object, basically. I think it was there. Apparently, Childs has a Barstool account, because that's what it was tied to, the Childs Barstool account.
Who knew? I saw Billy Sam at high school orientation last Friday. Brady has a class on his hallway, but not in his class.
So that must have been where she saw him. All right. So you got some Child's football. It's the preseason for high school football in Tallahassee. Listen, we're just going to have a little bit of fun today. There are a lot of things that are going on in and around college football. We are going to hit a little bit on Florida State, not long, but we've got some things that were said and done around college football today. We just want to take a listen to, and then give our reaction to what we think is going on, or what we think that particular person was saying about a particular situation or program. So we are going to start in Tallahassee, Shane. As you well know, there was some drama over on this campus with defensive back Conrad Hussey leaving the program, and it has since broken that he was involved in a physical confrontation with one of his coaches on the defensive side of the ball. I have been able to surmise that it was one of the secondary coaches, based off everything that I can gather. But I want us to take a listen at what Brandon Marcellus from I believe it was CBS Sports had to say about this situation.
Defensive coordinator Tony White being very disappointed with their second scrimmage of preseason camp and saying, quote, "There's some guys who need to, quite frankly, step their ass up." Well, about a day later, Conrad Hussey was no longer with the program. No reason was given, but my sourcing down in Tallahassee tells me that Conrad Hussey had a physical altercation with a position coach at Florida State, which led to him no longer being with the program. And as one source told me, it wasn't a good look for Conrad Hussey, and it also wasn't a good look for the position coach. And we say all that to say this. You guys have probably seen Mike Norvell this offseason talk a lot about how the attitude, the demeanor of the team last season was not all congealing together. They didn't really want it. He's just come out and said that. They were 2-10. He said we had to go in, kind of rebuild the roster and bring guys in that would buy into our vision.
All right, so Brandon's reading into the bigger picture, and to me, that's where the question really is. I don't make too much of the incident itself, right? You see coaches and players get into it. What does altercation mean? Was it they were in each other's faces? That is probably what it was. My understanding is there was no punches thrown. What is your take on this situation? What does it say to you?
Yeah, I think it's truly an isolated incident at this point, based on what you know of the staff's time there, and an unfortunate incident that probably both sides regret. You get these heated environments, and I don't know all the details and what led to it exactly, obviously, but you get in these heated environments, and sometimes, there's a lot of passion and work and things that go into what's happening in college football. And we've all been a part of that, to your point. As a coach or as a player, I think we've experienced both sides. But if it crosses a certain threshold, there's, it's regretful for both sides. So I think it's isolated. I don't think it's probably a temperature of the team, so to speak. It's just one of those things that happens. And, but when things happen, they can't be undone at the same time, right? So even though it's an isolated incident, whatever it was that they thought couldn't be redeemed.
Yeah, listen, and I've covered the program for all of Conrad Hussey's existence as a Florida State Seminole. One of the rumors, or one of the things that was going around when he, even going back to last year, was the guy that was not buying in, that needed to mature. Clearly, this is more evidence of that. I'm not saying that what transpired earlier in this week, which we don't know the details, was his fault. Now, he is a talented kid. You hate to see a talented kid waste his opportunity at a place like Florida State. But at the end of the day, to me, just based off what his reputation was on the beat, that he was a kid that was fighting coaching. Fighting taking it, right? He was always that he was not totally bought in. I think this is addition by subtraction. In this particular case, you hope that this is an isolated event and does not talk about cracks in the foundation of this program, right? And
right,
based on what I remember in my conversations with the other guys that have covered this program, while I was covering the program, this is Hussey had some growing up to do, and had not been maturing like they would needed him to.
I think when you're coaching a guy, what's interesting is there are certain guys who you bump heads with on the field, but you don't off the field. And what I mean is they operate inside your program in a way that's, that they meet the standard, the culture, all the things we talk about: weight room, class, workout, the meetings. And then you have this personality conflict on the field just because of the way maybe you guys compete together. I prefer those problems. I can work through those, right? Those are the kind of things we can grow together. I learned how to coach you. You learn how to take my coaching, and we evolve over the first couple of years together. And then there's the kid who, is the exact opposite, right? Who's a hassle away from the field, and all he loves is playing football. And that's kind of what keeps him going. Yeah, you just hate it, because the only fallout you get from this kind of thing, there is in the locker room. Again, those relationships are deep. They're 2 years deeper with Conrad probably than they are the staff, right? So and again, I don't think kids take sides necessarily, but it's their buddy, and it's hard to see your buddy go hurt, and I'm sure Conrad's hurting, so it's hard for those guys to watch.
Yeah, well, listen, it stinks either way that it didn't work out for whatever reason. Because listen,
super talented kid, super talented.
At the end of the day, what this kid had shown early in his career was that he could have been a really good football player for Florida State. Whatever the situation is, and listen, as Brandon said, it was not a good look. It's not a good look for your program when this gets out in public. And I don't want to make any bigger deal out of it than there is. I mean, it's not the first time a player and a coach have gotten into it. I remember when I was playing, if I didn't get my face mask grabbed on a daily basis, something was wrong, right? And I was a guy that was kind of going to spit back. I wasn't going to be disrespectful, but also didn't like being grabbed I had
And I think sometimes a change of environment, I don't know. There were kids at Florida State we took in the portal that, you call and do background. That's part of what you do when you're taking a guy in. At the previous place, hey, Shane, this is not a guy you want. And as you add to the picture, you take a kid, and then you call back your buddy, a year later and say, what do you mean? What was your issue with this kid? We didn't have that issue. And so I saw that in the portal, and I've heard those stories again and again. So again, sometimes change of scenery, change of environment is good for both parties.
But yeah, I think Mike is clear. It was clear in his comments that it was time to move on. He thanked Conrad for the experience that the program had with him, and it was time to go. And listen, as we well know, these relationships are never ending, right? I'm not saying they're going to circle back to Conrad and bring him back into the program, but we have seen kids leave Florida State before and end up back on this roster. And whether this was a individual relationship specific to that particular coach and Conrad, and maybe that coach leaves and Mike says, hey, you're too good of a football player not to bring you back now. But I don't think that's going to happen, but we've seen stranger things happen. All right, I want to move on to that. From that, listen, I don't have a graphic for it. It certainly caught my attention. And Brian Kelly, LSU's head coach, was speaking with a group of boosters, I think, in New Orleans, or at least they were visitors to the complex. And he made a statement when we took this program over, the bar was really low relative to what the standards were. I think that certainly caught my attention because of the fact that the last guy who set the standard and that's Ed Orgeron, won a national championship at LSU, something that Brian Kelly is still looking to do, entering a critical year 4. I think that's where my reaction when I saw it was, what are you talking about, Brian? You're
right.
talking about
Les Miles won a national championship.
Right.
So did
So,
the expectation. Yeah, I'm with you.
So I don't think what he, and I want you to explain this because you and I have talked about it before we started taping the show. I don't think what he was talking about was from a wins and losses perspective or a winning a conference title or winning a national championship. I think he's very aware. He is probably more acutely aware on August 15th of 2025 about what the standards are on the field for LSU than he was when he took the job 3 years ago.
Right.
What is he talking about?
Yeah, you come in as a new staff, and you're going to hold, and whether you're just doing it because you're new, and it's just a change of pace for the kids inside that program, or because they weren't held to the standard by the previous staff. And I think that's what sounded like. It was a veiled shot at Orgeron and his staff on their way out the door that kids weren't being held accountable. That's what it sounded like, the standard off the field, whether that be in, a variety of things that they were asking of those kids. That's what I think he was getting at. And that is what happens, right? The product slips off the field before it slips on the field, right? The way you operate inside your program and or you don't operate always happens first.
And I don't doubt that I don't think there's much room for doubt that Brian Kelly probably expects more off the field than Ed Orgeron. I think Ed was worried about winning ball games. Ed was played a little fast and loose with outside the office stuff too. I mean, he was. I could see him not as being demanding from an off the field perspective than Brian is. Brian's a little bit more buttoned up. He's been at Notre Dame. Ed's a little bit of a wild man himself. So I think Ed was more concerned about meeting the standards on the field. And obviously, he said there were a lot of players that were suspended at LSU when he was there. I think I agree with you. I think Brian Kelly is talking about what he expects from players on his team, off the field, in the meeting rooms, in the weight room, all of that.
And I got a lot of respect for Brian. Obviously, I've coached against him a couple times, and it's hard to argue against the success he's had. And he just, I don't know. Sometimes he's almost like Hugh Freeze. I don't think he means, and he's not really putting his foot in his mouth, like you said. He's not. I don't know if it's a sound bite that gets taken out of context. I feel like it happens with him, whether it's the post-game press conference last year, when he slams the table, or the viral moment when he was spinning on the It just seems weird how he finds himself in some of these.
Well, I think he listen. I think his antics on the sideline over the years, where it looks like his face is going to explode. I think that has been an easy target for people, particularly in the social media era of college football, where we're going to make fun of everybody and everything for any particular reason. I mean, I think Twitter can be a clever place at
it's
times,
undefeated.
but it's mostly a mean place, and everybody's an expert anymore about every damn thing. But anyway, yeah, listen, he's a great coach. The track record proves it. He's
No
won
doubt.
everywhere he's went. He beat us at USF. We were at Cincinnati. Now we beat him when he was at Notre Dame. When I was at UCF, so we'll take that one over the losses to Cincinnati. But anyway, yeah. So interesting. But I think it was. I think my reaction to it is first was, what the hell are you talking about? And then the more I sat on it, I was like, he's not talking about on the field stuff. Everybody knows what. This is a big year for him. Year 4, a lot of pressure. He's got to make a major move. I think he's got to get to 10 wins or not. He's got to compete for a spot in the playoffs for sure, or it's going to be a long season for the Lions. All right. I mean, for the Tigers. They're not Lions. All right. Speaking of, we're going to hop back to Florida State, Shane, and talk a little bit about the craziness that is recruiting. And one of the reasons I am so happy that I am not working as a recruiting analyst anymore, because I don't think that commitments have ever meant anything in the history of the game. It's not nothing is final until you sign make your DocuSign document sign. Get that signed. You don't sign the it's not a paper thing anymore. But listen, Izayia Williams, hell of a recruit, one of the best linebackers in high school for the class of 2026. Has flipped from Ole Miss to Florida State. Now, this is the second time he has committed to Florida State. He committed, as you can see, to Louisville, then flipped to Syracuse, then flipped to Florida State, then flipped to Florida, then flipped to Ole Miss, and is now flipped to back to Florida State. Wake me up when it's over. Wake me up in December, because I don't think his commitment means anything. But what does this say about the recruiting process in the NIL era? What's it say? Is this more kid specific? Is it more NIL specific? A little bit of both. And at the end of the day, what's it say about the kid and who is leading him? Because it's weird.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a lot to get into there. I do think, there used to be a time in recruiting kids and the families that, once they committed, not that, that it was truly over, but it was your word was your bond, I guess. And I think, obviously if something seismic happened in the kid's recruitment, you'd understand it. If you were at Elon coaching and you have a kid who's committed and all of a sudden East Carolina came, it's hard to, say, well, God, I'd probably do the same thing, but if East Carolina called me, or if you're at UCF and you're recruiting a kid and all of a sudden, Florida or Florida State shows up late in the process, those are understandable, I think, at times, even as a coach, as you sit on the other side of the table and see kids take advantage of those opportunities. I don't know if this is, I think it's a little bit, it's sometimes just based on kid-based. NIL, might add to it. I don't know. I think money's always been involved, right, in recruitments. Yep. And so I don't know. I do think there's a pressure now because of the timeline, the June official visit window, which seems to be where everybody finishes up prior to their senior season, making a commitment off those June visits. So maybe it's some of that. I don't know. It's
well, it's good. It's good for On 3 and 24/7 because they got something to write about. And then they're all writing up their evals of Izayia Williams and what he's going to bring to Florida State. And listen, I give Florida State a 50% chance of signing this kid at best.
That might be a good business model. Just have kids flip so you have something fresh to write about. No. Yeah, I don't like. You hate it. I mean, again, sometimes it's understandable. You hate to see it over and over. I guess the good news is he's come back home again, so to speak. He's back where he once was.
Yeah. Let's see how many other schools he repeats commitments to. But anyway, listen, this is an outlier in a world where, listen, again, commitments really don't mean anything. I don't understand why college football fans fall in love with kids that commit, then get their feelings hurt when he decommits. And listen, it's not over until they sign a dotted line. I don't think it's over with this kid. Listen, we've already said when it comes to Florida State, a lot of their recruiting success is going to be dictated by what happens on the field this year. So we'll see how this plays. But if I'm a Florida State fan, it's not a commitment I am taking seriously. Hey, if we get him, great, but don't set yourself up for heartache if you're a Florida State fan, because there's no telling how this is going to work out by the time we get to December 3rd or 4th, whenever early National Signing Day is. All right.
Well, I think the old saying is that just means if a kid commits before signing day, it meant who's in the lead, right? Everybody knows who to gang up on. So now everybody that's recruiting that young man knows who has the lead in the clubhouse, and that's who they're going to beat up on. So yeah.
All right, we're going to move on back to our man Justin Hokanson and what's going on with Auburn and the Hugh Freeze and his play callers. Play calling, who was doing it. There was a lot made. If you're an Auburn fan or SEC fan, you probably saw this clip on X or Twitter. And this is courtesy of Justin Hokanson with auburnsports.com. And this is Hugh Freeze talking about how his staff is going to call plays for the 2025 season on offense.
Will you clarify something on like play calling stuff? Last year it was, hey, those guys were kind of setting first and third downs, suggesting things, and then you're kind of going from there. Is that kind of the way
it's Derek Nix is the offensive coordinator, and he does all the planning, scripting, in charge of the game plan. But man, there's no staff that is not a collaboration when you're playing. And I offensively or defensively reserve the right to say on the call sheet, I don't really like that one right here. But he does a great job for us. Kent kind of leads the third down plan. But other than that, Nick's kind of leads the charge and has the play calling duties, with me reserving the right to say, hey, I go over on defense, and during the when we're on defense, to do head coaching duties and do the same thing there and say, I think you ought to give me a hole player here. Or I don't tell DJ a whole lot, but there's times I can see what I think offenses are doing, and I say, hey, man, I think we need to cloud this. But that's the way it'll be this year. And while I'm doing that, there's the offensive guys led by Nix are talking about the next series and what we should do. And usually there's another TV timeout or something, so I have time to get back on and say, all right, what do y'all think? Yes, I like that. I like all of that.
When it comes to talking to Jack.
All right, so I think this is where the controversy around the state. Kent leads the third down plan, right? I think that's what caught people's attention. And I believe there might be an extended version of that where he talks about so-and-so is responsible for first down, right? So explain to people what he was saying, because I think he could have explained it better. But operationally, how do programs work? Talking about down and distance type situations as you plan for a football game.
Yeah, that reminds me again of the Brian Kelly thing, where I don't think which is why you're asking. What he said was taken out of context, and people made a big deal out of something that wasn't. But ultimately, as we go into a game week and we go in our separate offices on Sunday, after we grade that tape, we all are tasked with certain pieces of game plans. On defense, there's a short yardage guy and a goal line guy and a third down person who has, the pass game, the route tree they run on third down. And somebody else has the protections that you see and formationally what you see on third down. And we all have a piece of this game plan we're collaborating on. We're the expert. So when we come together on Monday morning, Sunday night, and we start game planning that portion of the call sheet, because you're calling that game by down and distance, as a defense and offense. That's how the games are called. So now we're building out a script, a call sheet, based on largely that guy's feedback in that room. We're all watching the tape. But hey, Shane, tell me here, these protections, how much on third down are we getting more 3-step? We get more 5-step? Is it, play action off the short yardage stuff? I'm the expert in that piece of the game plan. Now, once we get to Saturday, just like he was saying, the coordinator is going to call the game, But every coach I've been around, head coach that it's worth his salt, he's going to have an opinion, and it might be on defense. Hey, I don't care what you do here. Give me your best pressure. Or, hey, I don't care what you do here. Special teams coordinator, we're not going to go after this kick. Or on offense, jumping on the headphones. Every head coach has always been able to do that on a staff I've been a part of. And I think that's what he's saying. Hey, if I feel strong enough, I'm going to jump in here. It's my program. And most coordinators I've been around, head coaches or, assistant coaches, they get it. If the head coach, that's his prerogative. And I'm going to defer to you without any hesitation.
Yeah, and I think some people are reading into when he said, particularly the Kent leads the third down plan. I think some people that don't know were saying, okay, so the offensive coordinator is calling the plays on first and second down, Kent's calling the plays on third, and Hugh Freeze overrides it all if he wants to. Well, the last part is true. Hugh Freeze is going to override anything he wants on that football team. That's why they're the head coach. But I think that people took it out of context. And that's not what he was saying. When I was at South Florida, I think, some guys were going to go and see what the teams did on third and short, right? And goal line. You had a guy that broke the film down for that. You had a guy. I think it was a much to do about nothing. I think that it probably could have been addressed. Hey, Nick's his offensive play caller. And obviously I have override authority. I think if you just answer it like that, but I think once you threw in the Kent leads a third down plan, it kind of took on a life of its own, as it's apt to do in today's social media world.
It seems like it happens with him more than maybe it's the Auburn fan base. I don't know, but it feels like it happens with him and Brian Kelly a lot.
Oh, I think they're paying real close attention to what he says because they expected a lot of things when they brought him in here 3 years ago at Auburn, and we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, again, I think it's all. You can't be so literal with what some of these coaches are saying if you don't understand the business, right? You gotta.
That's right.
You gotta have educated ears. And speaking of educated ears, we're going to switch to a little bit. There's been a lot of fanfare recently as John Gruden makes his way around college and pro football camps. He came out famously earlier in the week and talked about how he loved the coach in the SEC, gave this impassioned speech to the University of Georgia, filled with expletives about how he wants to come in and kick Kirby Smart's ass. And, he gets, Gruden's a fired up guy. So obviously that caught the attention. He's got the lawsuit going on with NFL, which it looks like he's fixing to take the NFL to the woodshed, and he might be the head coach of all 32 teams next year in the NFL, let alone one college football team, because he's got, everything I'm reading is correct, he's kind of got the NFL in a little bit of a precarious position. So I'm not sure he's ever going to get to college football. I think he is going to be a head coach in the NFL next year, particularly because you're not. If somebody leaked those emails, and this was it could cause a lot of problems. But he's fixing to get paid a large sum of money. He may never coach again, or he may just turn himself into the commissioner of NFL football. But anyway, Pete Thymal went on the Pat McAfee show and had an interesting take. And I don't know what Pete Thymal knows. I know a lot of guys that cover football that really don't know a lot about football. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to give you some examples of that. But this makes me wonder why Pete Thymal is covering any kind of football, because he makes a statement to Pat McAfee that makes no sense whatsoever.
Authority, yesterday or 2 days ago, John Gruden came out and basically said, like, hey, I love the SEC. What a dream it would be to coach, in this conference, and that he does want to coach again. Will there be teams, you think, that will reach out to John Gruden? Are there SEC teams now this season that are going to have any sort of kind of prove-it year type things, a la Hugh Freeze at Auburn? Do you think John Gruden realistically will
Sam
be?
Pittman.
Arkansas, sure. Do you think that there's a chance Gruden's going to be coaching the SEC next year?
My hunch on Gruden, Connor, is that look, there's 136 of these Division I FBS jobs, right? It's a Star Wars bar, right? You go from Miami to Seattle, from Phoenix to Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, right in your neighborhood, Connor. Like there's a lot in between, right? Marshalls and Western Kentucky's and Arkansas States. I think John Gruden could land somewhere amid that. I would not project him to go to the SEC. I will be amused if
Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
I think there's just better college coaches available than John Gruden. John Gruden is certainly an excellent football coach.
Peter!
But
Whoa.
Pete! Authority!
You think that, honestly? Why do you think that?
John Gruden!
This is John Gruden we're talking about. He's coached GM.
I don't believe he's ever coached in college.
He has coached the NFL.
Okay, so
He's
do we
got
think
a
Bill
Super Bowl.
Belichick's going to be able to figure it out maybe now that it's professional football at the college?
All right. So what are we talking about? There's better coaches in college football than John Gruden. Maybe there's guys that are more better fits for college football, but you don't go. You cannot be taken seriously as a guy that covers college football or football in general and say that there's better coaches out there than John Gruden. And by the way, John Gruden did coach in college. He started at Tennessee as a GA. So I don't know where all these freaking writers, they don't do their homework. Listen, not every coach that coaches in NFL started in NFL. It's one of the, I hate it when somebody says, well, they shouldn't hire him. He's a college coach. All these guys started. Bill Parcells was at Florida State. Joe Gibbs was a college. I mean, I go on and on. Anyway, what the hell is Pete Thymel's saying when he says programs in the SEC could find a better football coach than, and who the hell is he talking about? Is what I mean. So, what's your take on Pete Thymel making one of the laziest statements I've seen anybody make this week as a member of the media?
I want to go back and see what Pete's take was on, Bill Belichick at UNC, maybe Dion at Jackson State, or, some of these other more recent examples. If he had the same take, maybe that's just, he's, hard that way, hard lean that way. To me, and we talked about Dion the last couple of years, to me, your ability to acquire talent is what coaching's about, whether it's through the draft, which is actually much more regulated in the NFL, or whether it's through recruiting in college. And I think he's got a dynamic personality. So I think his ability to actually coach the game, I don't think that's been questioned, right? So I don't know what the question marks would be. I don't see John, and I don't think, again, taken out of context, he was giving this impassioned speech to the Georgia team. But if he were going to be a coach in college, I would want to be here against Kirby, because this is the cathedral or the biggest, stage, the mountaintop of college football. And so I don't think, he has any interest at all in being a college coach. I'm like you. I think if he's going to coach, he's going to coach in the NFL. But I don't know. When you start looking at jobs in your mind, you start saying, all right, what's going to come open after the season? And then you start searching for names to replace some of these guys on the hot seat. I don't know the pool he's swimming in over there with Pete and who the guys are that are in it, but it's a short list in my mind. And
and listen, if he were to coach college football, which I don't think he will, I think the only way he would consider coaching college football if he knew he was blackballed from the NFL. And what's gone on in the last week with his court case is probably going to open up opportunities in the NFL he would not have had otherwise. But listen, saying that there's better coaches out there is like telling North Carolina they could have hired better coaches than Bill Belichick. Coaches that are more comfortable and more familiar with how college football operates, but day by day, college football is moving to an NFL model. And if John Gruden took over a program, he would have a personnel department run by a guy like Michael Lombardi's doing for Bill Belichick at UNC, and there would be player acquisition done that way, as opposed to him being recruiting like the colleges used to, right? So I think it was a strange statement. It certainly sounds like Imel's not a Gruden fan based off what he said, and that's fine. We all have personal biases that we bring into our observations. I think that's human nature. We try to limit those. But listen, I thought it was one of the dumbest things that guy's ever said.
Well, I thought it was interesting, the reaction he got from McAfee and the boys. They all pushed back on him. They pushed back on him pretty hard there. So they got after him.
Tell me you know nothing about football without telling me you know nothing about football. I mean, and listen, they're number.
You don't think Pete played?
I don't think Pete played. And listen, there are some situations over the last 6 years where I almost think that you ought to have a license to cover college football. I'm going to tell you some things later on as we get deeper into this year about things I heard and saw in the press box by writers that you're gonna laugh. But anyway, I'm not gonna do it today because we got some other things we want to talk about. Now, listen, we're gonna go. This is kind of a little bit on a more positive note. Marcus Freeman, the head coach at Notre Dame, has his seniors come and speak to the team during the course of camp. And I caught this yesterday, and it reminds me of the good old days of college football, which are fleeting as fast as they can. But he called one of his seniors up in front of his team. And to me, with what we're covering with, the Conrad Hussey situation and multiple flips by a guy that's not even in college, Izayia Williams, just use those two as examples since we just talked about them. I want to listen to what this kid said. And listen, I don't think that I think it's just refreshing that this happened, but I'm going to get your thoughts on what this kid said, Shane, as we listen to.
Tonight, we're going to start our senior speakers. And the first one is from Middletown, New Jersey, number 84, Kevin Ballman.
Notre Dame means everything to me. It means opportunity. It means growth. So coming here, class of 2020, freshman year, huge goals, huge aspirations. Sophomore year, right? We opened the year at Florida State, night game, break my leg in that game. And I remember being carted off the field, tears in my eyes. How could this happen, right? This was my moment. Said, hey, all right, whatever, it happens. Junior year is my year. Week 4 practice, I remember where it happened, the exact play call, tear my ACL. Year 4 still in the plan, right? Like, this is it, let's go, this is the year. Tear the same ACL again. And at that point, instantly I'm thinking, hey, I'm never gonna play another snap of football again. So took some time, talked to my family about it, went to Coach Free's office, and I said, hey, Coach, if you'll let me, I want to do a 5th year here. Didn't go the way I planned it to. And so that brings me here, right? And I share that with you guys just to show you, like, this is a journey, right? This is your journey. Each and every single one of you is going to have a different journey than the guy next to you. I was just asked recently, like, all these things that have happened to you, like, would you change them? And the answer is no. Because everything that's happened, the good, the bad, the ugly, the highs, the lows, has brought me to, like, this moment right here, standing in front of you guys. But my advice is keep it light, have fun with it. This place is so special. I wouldn't trade this place for the world.
All right, so old school comments from a young kid. Looks like he has great perspective. Looks like he's coming back for a 6th year, basically, as he was a 2020 kid. I think he mentioned that it first. So I guess he could get a 6th year. But anyway, just your thoughts on that. We so much of the other stuff gets the attention.
I had no clue you were going to play that clip. Backstory on Kevin. Last time I saw Kevin was, I believe, summer camp at Rutgers, 2017. I recruited his high school. He came over for camp. We offered him as a freshman. And I think we might have been his first offer if you went back and researched that. But so I remember Kevin as a freshman in high school. The last time I saw him was when I left Rutgers, and didn't recruit up there any longer. But we played against him when I was at Florida State, said hello to him. Or waved at him before the game because I was down there checking numbers for the Notre Dame O-line and their tight ends, and saw him that day. So really neat. Just he comes from a really cool high school, a lot of traditions. So I think he's probably been steeped in all that, even as a high school player. What football means and education means comes from a real great place. But yeah, it's still. For some kids, the relationships mean more than anything, and the journey, it's about the journey. And not everybody's portaling. And just because people are, doesn't mean that, they don't feel the same way about a place that he does.
Right. Well, listen, I think there's more kids like him playing college football than not, right? We talk about the dramatic ones. We talk about the best players of the best, the guys, we talk about the Nico, whatever his name is, that transferred from Tennessee because his quarterback making $1 million. But for every Nico, there's 4 of this guy, right? I mean, that's the reality of it. But anyway, it was just refreshing. It was a kind of a feel-good thing because most of what we focus on is the drama or the negative, and there's a lot of this going on. And I think it speaks to, I think it speaks to his toughness that he's sticking it out. He's coming back for what looks like a 6th year, and obviously thinks that challenges or help what builds you, right? I mean, he's not looking to take unfortunate about the injuries, but his commitment is admirable. And I just thought it was kind of a positive way to talk about college football on today's show. All right. I know Go ahead.
It's just neat. Again, like I haven't seen the kid in a long time, but I spent a lot of time watching him work out in his high school. It's just fun to see that, right? Again, very little exposure to the kid since then, and I don't know him deeply, and really just from a high school recruitment way. But it's just neat to watch guys, look forward 7 years, 6 years later, whatever it was, and they have matured that way. It's cool.
Well, you've already given me an idea. Next time we do this, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to put on. That way I get it, because you didn't know that was coming. You knew, I think most of the rest of them, I kind of gave you a heads up on. So maybe next week to get a authentic reaction to every one of them, we will, and that way you don't have time to. Of course, it's always good when you put your thoughts together ahead of time. But yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize you knew that kid. So I was just having a conversation today with what a small world football is.
So small.
6 degrees of separation from everybody. But all right, so let's take Thomas Hammock, who obviously beat Notre Dame last year, 6 degrees of separation, talking about before Notre Dame went on a run, had some interesting things to say about the portal and NIL earlier this week in a post-practice interview. So, Shane, I think you've seen this, but I want to play it for our viewers and listeners that have not heard what Thomas had to say. But he is addressing, I don't know what the specific question was, but he's addressing NIL and portal and guys that have left their program, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, to be honest with you, I love the challenge. It don't bother me one bit, because you know what? In life, you're going to make decisions, right? Sometimes it's going to work in your favor and sometimes it's not. I told our team the other day, we lost all these guys. Let's see who plays. So it's all good when people put it on Twitter, hey, all glory to God, I'm going on the transfer portal. Let's see if they play. How many of those guys going to play or travel or get snaps? I was going to tweet something the other day, a picture of me, and say, you know what? I enjoyed my college experience. I didn't get one dime, but the lessons I learned was more valuable than any money you can ever pay me. And I appreciate that, because that is long term. People are losing the fact that this is short term. I coached in the National Football League for 5 years. 5 years. Right? Don't lose focus of what the long term. Get your degree, learn valuable lessons that's going to help you in the long term of your life. That's the whole purpose. This is a transition from being a kid to a grown-up. And I hope people don't lose focus of that. Everybody's talking about everything else besides what is the most important thing for going to college. Because if you're going to college to go get a couple dollars, you might as well go get a job. This is too hard to go get a couple dollars. Learn the lessons that you need to learn to be successful in life for the next 40 to 50 years of your life. I would do it again for free, because of the things I learned. That's why I'm standing here today, because of what I learned in college, not because of how much somebody gave me. That's what I would tell people. And parents, they need to learn that lesson too. Stop trying to live through your kids. Go teach your kids what are the things they need to learn to be successful. That's what I'm telling my kids. I don't care about no NIL, no revenue share. I can care less. You need to learn things in college to get you prepared for life, to be a father, a husband, to work, everything else. Those are the most important things. That's what people are missing, in my opinion. Just my opinion.
All right, what's your take on what Coach Hammock had to say?
I disagree strongly with his thoughts on the NIL portal world of college football. I think two things can be true at the same time. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can learn some of those lessons, get your degree, learn what it means to work through problems and grow and mature. Also take advantage of NIL and portal. Specifically, it's what I'm doing with Ascension Sports. It's why I left Florida State, Pat. I saw guys, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, who earned their way out of their previous place, whether with a degree or not, or on course to get a degree at their next program. Mature kids, well-thought decisions, and came and got a great degree from Florida State, grew in their time here. And then really what they did was improve a draft position that they couldn't have gotten to at Western Michigan or at Albany. And those guys it wasn't for a couple of dollars. It might have been in the interim,
Right.
but it was for millions of dollars. So what it was for these guys, it was an educated decision in the portal to come and take advantage of this opportunity to go make a generational wealth and pursue a career they've dreamt of in the NFL. I think he's right. The majority of kids in the portal, all right, are taking lateral to downward moves. And when they get there, by and large, most kids are disappointed in the portal. That's what you don't hear about. But again, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, to make sure guys are targeted in that, and that we help avoid all those pitfalls. But I disagree with him. I understand what he's saying. The grass is not always greener, all those things. But I think it's a complex issue.
Yeah, I don't think it's as black and white as all that. Listen, I think each individual kid's case is different, right? If you can get, and the fact of the matter is, the Group of 5 programs, I think some of it's knowing where you are, right? And I think he does understand where he's at. But the Group of 5 are going to turn into feeder systems for Power 4s, right? It's what it is, particularly on the offensive and defensive line, where it's harder to project a kid coming out of high school. I think you're going to continue to see that. The Group of 5 teams are going to get picked over, just like the Group of 5 teams are picking over FCS teams, right? So I think that you got to be cognizant of that, and so I think it's specific to each individual situation. Where if you got a kid going from Northern Illinois and he has a chance to go to Ohio State or Penn State or Illinois for that matter, and go from making $50,000 in NIL to making $500,000, it's kind of hard not to tell them to do that, because you're doing the same job just for more money. And just about everybody in America that has any sense, if your job responsibility is the same from one job to the next, you're generally going to take the job that pays more. So I think there's just some common sense there.
And I've seen it work the other way too. I've seen guys who, in my time dealing in the portal, who took the short-term financial gain, and because it wasn't an educated decision, it didn't pay off on the field, it therefore didn't pay off in the draft. So I do understand what he's saying at that point. I think most people are just grabbing at thin air when they go in the portal. And I think he's also speaking to his team. Like you said, every coach that speaks in a press conference is speaking to his team and to how he's attacking that situation. But
yeah,
I do agree. Most kids make a mistake in the portal. I guess I would lean more to, he's right. It's been a net negative for most of college football, but if done the right way, I think it certainly can be a benefit for a kid.
I think it goes I'll go back. I think it has to do with each individual kid. There are some kids, you mentioned Braden Fisk. He would have made a mistake to stay at Western Michigan as opposed to coming to Florida State. He would have made a mistake for his short-term future and his long-term future. Because listen, here's the thing. A lot of these guys are going to make more money playing college football than they are in their first 5-6 years of whatever they do outside of football, right? You're going to have a lot of kids that are at Florida and Florida State making $150,000, $150,000 or more that aren't going to make that kind of money. So they got to take advantage of this when they can. And then the other part of this, just human nature, particularly at that age. Kids at that age are always going to want to go to the dance with the prettiest girl, right? So some of this is Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Florida are prettier than Northern Illinois, Western Michigan, Eastern Illinois, whatever you want to say. It's not till you get a little bit older that you realize the cute girl with the great personality is who you should have took to the dance, right? So I think this is a conversation with a lot of layers, and I don't think a one size fits all works in this situation.
And I'll say this, with some of the guys we've dealt with in the portal, Pat, you're talking about some of these dollar figures that are, in excess of $500,000 for a year of playing college football. So, and maybe it's in excess of 300. I mean, but there's guys on our roster who, like you said, it's real money. It's money that probably far outweighs or far exceeds their ability to earn that in the career that they're studying to pursue with their degree. So I think people got to understand that if you were put in the same situation, it would be really hard given some of the numbers these kids, and like you said, especially if it's a good football situation on top of that, it makes no sense not to pursue it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think he's probably got specific instances in mind when he said what he said. And maybe he's right. Maybe you don't go to another school over $10,000 or $15,000, or to be a backup at a school that's got a bigger brand, a bigger name. Maybe you don't get the snaps that you need to move on to the next level because, as you well know, if you can play football, the NFL is going to find you.
They're going to find you. They got scouts paid to go everywhere. And so, like I said, Fisk and Verse are going to be NFL football players, whether they come here or not. It was just how much were they going to get paid for their first 3 or 4 years to do that. And they made a ton more as Rams by coming to Florida State than they would have as, being at Western and Albany. And that's the truth of the matter. They still would be NFL football players, but they wouldn't have gotten paid as well into their second contract.
Right. I mean, Braden Fisk is probably a 4th, 5th, or 6th round pick if he's at Western Michigan or wherever he was at. And what he was a 2nd or 3rd round pick coming out of Florida State.
3rd pick, 2nd round, I believe.
Yeah. So he had proven himself against top tier competition, Power 4 competition. Was one of the leading drivers in Florida State's season. I thought he was the alpha on that defense. It had several. But yeah, I think it's a specific conversation about specific kids, and I don't think a one size fits all works in that scenario. Listen, Thomas Hammock's done a great job there, and I'm sure that there's some nuance that we're not getting for a particular situation. But
well, I think again the numbers bear it out. Most kids who transfer, they transferring up from Group of 5 to Power 4, they lose snaps. They're going to be backups. They're going for a lesser role, and it ends up being about the finances for most kids.
Yeah.
Whether they meant for it to be or not, right? Whether they meant for it to be financial or not, they're uneducated in where they're going, and that's what happens most of them.
Yeah, and listen, I do think the portal's being used too much by too many players, and it just turns out that listen, we've seen kids that have transferred to Florida State over the last 2 or 3 years that can't play at Florida State, shouldn't have transferred, or Florida State over. I mean, it happens everywhere. I'm not just using Florida State because we're in Tallahassee. Anyway, interesting. All right, so we just wanted to kind of take a spin around college football on our well, it's supposed to be a fast Friday. A little bit late. I think you got to go to. I think you got school pickup, Shane. So we're going to let you go, and we'll be back on Monday. We're going to have Corey Bender with us, who writes for the Florida on 3 site, to talk a little bit about the Florida Gators. We want to thank Home Instead of Tallahassee, Ascension Sports, and the Mowry Law Firm for sponsoring the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. We hope everyone has a great Friday, a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Shane, thanks for everything.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
Go Chiles.